Do you want to be rich and famous? Do you want endless crowds of fans to hang on your every word? Do you want to join the elite ranks of auteurs and finally gain the respect and adoration you so rightfully deserve, along with endless piles of cash and prestige? Do you want to be the center of attention and beloved by all thanks to your amazing work? Well, don't be a writer. At least that's what most writers would say. But Terrible Writing Advice is here to set the record straight and instruct everyone on how to start writing. Because this may surprise you, if you want to be a writer, one does have to pay the upfront fee of actually having to write. Good thing for you that Terrible Writing Advice will tell you all the methods a fledgling writer can use to dodge that pesky requirement and get to the good stuff. The first important question a writer must ask themselves is, why do they want to be a writer in the first place? The correct answer is, of course, easy money and fame. Writing is easy. As such, one can safely minimize their time spent writing and instead spend their time endlessly fantasizing about their future career in writing. Now, some might say that if money is the sole concern, then you could just go be a hedge fund manager or something. But I also want fame as well. Fame is just great, just wonderful. I love fame so much. Dealing with the receiving end of a bunch of parasocial relationships is a very healthy thing for any human to experience, and everyone should seek fame no matter how destructive or disruptive it is. Constant external validation will make anyone happy, much like the satisfying crunching sound made by a top-heavy building collapsing in on itself. Speaking of validation, every writer should seek validation first and foremost. Write just a single chapter, or just a paragraph, or a sentence, or just a single word, and then constantly pester others for only positive feedback. Having to fill an endless well of insecurity is essential to progressing any writing endeavor. Energy spent fishing for compliments rather than honing one's craft is energy well spent, especially when a writer has only just started writing and doesn't have enough material amassed for useful feedback. Because every beta reader should be able to predict a writer's future success based on a single sentence. Now, something to consider when one starts writing is to find a story to tell, which I don't need to do. This early pitfall can be avoided by simply focusing our energy on something more important, namely taking out loans so I can afford that luxury condo. Don't worry, once all that cash starts rolling in, I'll be able to pay back all that money easily. Gambling on the lottery odds of high sales figures of a future book is a great decision, much like any purchase made with money you'll never have. I don't have a single word on the page, but I think I'll quit my day job right now with zero money in the bank. So I've quit my day job after burning all of my bridges and now have all the time I need to focus on my writing. Well, I have 1 month until they shut off my power, but surely I can outline, write, edit, query, find an agent, negotiate in advance, publish, distribute, and market within the span of a couple of weeks. Gotta save that last week for a vacation to an expensive tropical island resort where I can hobnob with other elite writers. Maybe I'll just spend that first week thinking up tips I'll give them when we meet. So, am I ready to start writing now? No! First I have to hype up that awesome book I'm totally going to write one day, and that will be such a timeless classic that it will be required academic reading. Yeah, that's the mark of a successful writer, knowing that generations of bored students will be forced to endure my story. One way to hype up a future book is to meet other writers and fail to listen to anything they say while talking over them about how awesome my book will be. For the discerning gentlemen in the audience, when meeting a woman writer, automatically assume that she is an amateur who is soliciting you for advice, no matter how successful she is. When meeting with agents and publishers at a convention, be sure to get nasty at even the slightest perceived rejection, because it's not like these industry insiders all talk to each other. Yes, talking down to all these writers and publishing industry professionals is a good way to burn bridges, but we're here to brag, not make friends or useful contacts. In fact, endlessly bragging about writing a book is the most common method for being a writer. See, one doesn't even need to write in order to call themselves a writer. In fact, why bother to think up the details that will be in a future book when I can instead just talk about it in vague, incoherent muttering, or even better, clear my throat and change the subject. Yet for every 10 "I'm writing a book" guys, there's at least one tryhard who will actually try to write. What should this individual do? Should they start a fresh project with a limited design goal, center it around a character with a story arc, have an optional loose outline, and begin writing while adhering to the KISS principle? Ha! No, what a waste of time. Why do that when instead we can embark on a 12-year planning odyssey? This is my first book, so it will be my magnum opus and incorporate every genre and cool idea I've ever had. This massive mega story will have over 100 volumes, each clocking in at a 500k word count. boy, I can't wait to unload that onto some hapless beta reader. So my first story must be good. If it isn't good, how will I ever claim that I'm a real writer? If the first thing I write is bad, then I must be a bad writer with zero talent. We all know if a writer writes something bad, then the writing police come and take away their writing privileges forever. It's just like drawing. You either start out drawing perfect forms, or it's into the furry fetish webcomic pits with you. Do talented people have to practice in order to hone those talents? No. Everyone is either instantly an expert in something, or they should give up. Practice is for the losers who haven't learned to take shortcuts off tall cliffs. I could just accept that my first feeble attempts at writing will simply be terrible. Generating a graveyard of dead chapter 1s big enough to fill a dictionary is a bad sign because a real writer never makes mistakes and would certainly never take the time to learn why those projects failed. Why do that when instead we can keep workshopping that same stillborn first book I wrote over and over again rather than just setting aside and starting with a fresh project? What I really need is a good idea. Good stories are only made from good ideas, not from good writing. It's not like ideas are incredibly cheap. Now, I get asked if a story idea is good, a lot, and I've already covered this in the TWA episode about finishing a story and on being original, but apparently that was too subtle, so let me drop my TWA persona for a few sentences and try these honest thoughts instead. The best time to worry about if your story idea is good is when in front of a firing squad, because you should really be more worried about the execution. But Honest Thoughts JP doesn't know what he's talking about, therefore Terrible Writing Advice is here to present its fast guide on idea vetting in the form of a checklist. Does the story idea have a natural character arc built in or a character it's about? Does the idea add a conflict to the story on its own or if combined with another idea? Does the idea interact with an aspect of the setting, plot, or characters in an interesting way? Do any of the ideas form into a theme, motif, or reoccurring symbol? An idea need not tick every box, but more than one will help. Got that? Good. Throw it all away. An idea need only seem cool at the moment to be objectively good. Ideas should not be treated like pieces of a puzzle that work best when they click together to form a seamless whole. Treat tropes like Lego blocks that you can just slap together randomly, even if the end result is just a pile of tropes that resemble nothing. Stories need, in order of importance, characters, plot, and a setting. Having enough ideas to cover all three aspects without going overboard is a dumb approach. Either the story needs one singular idea stretched too thin to cover all aspects, or else be bloated with every cool thing the author could ever think of thrown in without regard for how they will interact with one another. Another thing to focus on, to the exclusion of all else, is genre. Rigidly adhering to genre conventions is an excellent strategy, especially when compared to just simply telling a good story and worrying about what made-up label to put on it later. For new writers, experimentation is highly discouraged, as they should instead spend their time worrying about adhering to the made-up rules of genres and treating tropes like gospel. If a writer does want to experiment, then their magnum opus should include every genre. Nothing is too good for my mega book series that will transcend literature itself and usher in a new age of prosperity for humankind. I'm sure a first book will manage that. My first book must also address this very important issue. This very important issue is probably some kind of touchy culture war topic that requires years of research and likely a couple of college courses to get a good understanding of, but there isn't time. I must insert very important issue into my first work rather than focusing on learning the fundamentals of writing. What else am I going to do with this soapbox I have? Never avoid sensitive topics until after a writer has a better grasp of the fundamentals. Besides, it's not like poorly articulating my message on the very important issue will turn people away from not only my writing, but also the cause I'm championing. That won't happen to me because I know everything, and the importance of my cause justifies its inclusion in the story no matter how much it breaks the story. Remember that being right is always more important than being effective. Now, if all of this is overwhelming, then a writer could just write what they know. Since the only thing I know is how to be a self-important jerk who thinks he's the center of the universe, I think I'll write about that. My protagonist will be an idealized version of myself. Yeah, those words aren't the death knell of a project. Why draw from life experience using perspective and hindsight to add genuine moments of real emotional experience that ground the story in authenticity when I could instead draw from my disproportionately large ego? Just insert yourself into the story wholesale rather than putting in parts of yourself. Never mind that idealizing oneself removes all flaws, thus making the character boring. Besides, removing my own flaws should be easy, even if I'm blind to them. Never step outside yourself and try to write from a different perspective. Stories are never used to explore a different perspective anyways. Inspiration can come from anywhere, especially things a writer is passionate about, and boy am I passionate about how awesome I am. Write what you know is easy for me because I already know everything. Dunning-Kruger told me so. And if that's not enough to draw from, then that's fine. I'll just let AI do the work for me. Now, I plan to do a dedicated AI video at a later date, so I won't get too much in the weeds of this topic. I can say that for new writers, AI is great because it does all the work for you, including making mistakes for you. Mistakes that a writer won't learn from because you will always learn more from your own mistakes than from the mistakes of others. The best part of creative expression is surrendering 99% of creative control over to an uncaring algorithm. This approach definitely won't hobble a writer in the long term when they fail to learn the fundamentals. Fundamentals that can only be mastered through practice. But what if a writer actually wants to write, yet gets bogged down in the complexity of a project and fails to break that project down into smaller pieces to tackle one at a time? What about just starting with a simple story about a character who undergoes some kind of change? That's no good. A story should be about my convoluted world building and worldview, not a character people can relate to. Characters are just mouthpieces for my personal philosophy anyway, a personal philosophy that is about as logically solid as a popsicle stick house being hit by a rocket launcher. This is especially effective when the writer is still in or just out of high school and has everything figured out. Never break down larger problems into smaller chunks that can be dealt with individually, nor should a writer consider adhering to the KISS principle with their early work, aka keep it simple, stupid. Yet the most important thing of all to remember is to not waste time writing. Sitting down and writing in a journal, starting out with simple writing prompts, just writing short scenes between two characters in conflict, all a waste of time. Being in love with the idea of being an author will float a writer through any obstacle, no matter how much harsh reality comes crashing down around them during that first draft hang-up, much less when neck deep in editing. Having a story to tell is far less important than having dreams of fame and fortune in my head. Besides, if all that fails, I can always write self-help books instead. Hey everyone, Hermit JP here. Sorry I've been gone so long. To avoid burnout, I took a year off to do some writing. I'm back now, so expect more videos in the future.